With a dream match being discussed for CM Punk and more, this is Wrestling Hub. My name is John and you're watching the Wrestling Report. Before we get into the rest of the video, make sure you subscribe to Wrestling Hub and turn on all notifications to stay up to date with everything in the world of pro wrestling. Also, don't forget to follow us on Instagram at Wrestling Hub Official and follow us on Twitter at Wrestling_Hub. Taking to social media, Hulk Hogan paid tribute to the late Iron Sheik, writing, "Today we honor the legacy of a wrestling icon. Rest in peace, Iron Sheik. The wrestling world has lost a true legend, and Sheik's contributions to our industry will never be forgotten. I'll always cherish the battles we had in the ring. Our matches were intense, and our rivalry was legendary. We shared a bond that only fellow wrestlers can understand. Iron Sheik's unique charisma, undeniable talent, and unforgettable personality made him an unforgettable figure in the hearts of wrestling fans worldwide. His legacy will continue to inspire generations of wrestlers to come. Rest in peace, Iron Sheik. You will always be remembered as a true warrior of the ring." Speaking of the Iron Sheik, this was said about his age by the Wrestling Observer. He was listed as being 81 years old, but given he didn't know his own birthday, there are different years listed in different places at different times for his birth. It's more safe to say he was probably 80, and may have been as old as 84. He was listed as being born on March 15th, 1942. In 1983, when I saw the Texas database with listed birthdays for pro wrestlers who were licensed in the state, his birthday at the time was listed in their records as March 15th, 1939. His biographer, Keith Elliott Greenberg, who wrote what he once said was the best wrestling biography never published, said he was actually born September 9th, 1942, which would have made him 80. The March birthday that's on his passport is incorrect, said Greenberg. He celebrated the September date in coordination with the Persian calendar. He told me he was born in 1942. Greenberg did admit in an article on Sheik that Sheik was not exactly sure when he was born. Speaking about the segment on Dynamite featuring Takeshita and Don Callis, the Wrestling Observer newsletter noted that also in getting notes from people at that show, they said in the crowd people booed so loudly you can't hear a thing Don Callis or Konosuke Takeshita were saying. When it comes to plans for a title update on SmackDown, WWE insider BWE noted that a lot of ideas been put on the table today. We'll share tomorrow, but first of the titles are getting updates on SmackDown, which I'll keep that for later. As commentators and those within WWE have been referring to the World Heavyweight Belt as the work rate title, the champion Seth Rollins had this to say about it, telling My Love Letter to Wrestling. "I think just kind of calling it the work rate title is a little bit underselling it. At the end of the day, the title exists because our roster is so chock full of talent. There's just too much to have one champion that's not around very much. I think the fact that we had so many worthy contenders, people that could hold this championship, I think that is the reason the title exists. If we had a weak roster and things weren't good and stuff wasn't hot, it might be a different story. It might be fine just to have one champion who wasn't around, didn't want to make live events, but that's just not the case. We're selling out left and right, we're hot. From here to Jeddah, Saudi Arabia, Paris, France, Mexico City, it doesn't matter. We're just selling out left and right. We need to have a world heavyweight champion on the men's side to represent that level of competition. I think we're going to put in the work to build this title to be as big as any championship in wrestling. And we're not naive and think that we don't need to put in that work. We know that it needs to happen, but we've got the roster and the guys and the crew who are willing to put in the time to make it feel as big as it is." With a new show on Saturday for their current line of programming, it seems AEW will be making changes because of this. With Dave Meltzer noting in the Wrestling Observer newsletter, AEW ran what may be its last house shows for a long time over the weekend. With them adding Collision, I don't see house shows likely, and there aren't any more left on the schedule. Plus, as the word gets out that the top stars aren't on these shows, unlike WWE, which features top stars on its house shows, it would get harder to draw. The June 2nd show, which went against SmackDown and Rampage on TV in Tupelo, Mississippi drew just 1,576. The June 3rd show in Huntsville, Alabama drew 2,237. One person brought up that a friend went to Huntsville largely because they expected merchandise would be easier to get because the lines are so long at AEW shows, but they had very little merchandise available and most of the popular items weren't there. Staying on the topic of AEW Collision, this was said about the new show having to compete with sports on Saturdays, with it said in the Wrestling Observer newsletter. With Collision upcoming, we've noted that the show will be preempted frequently for sports. Last year, TNT aired live sports on 11 of the 52 Saturday nights in prime time, which were mostly NHL playoffs and NCAA March Madness Division I playoff games, but also one MLB playoff game, the NBA All-Star Saturday night, and a golf special event. This year so far, it has done so 5 times, which was a Saturday night soccer match with the US team, the All-Star Saturday night, one NBA playoff game, one NHL playoff game, and one NCAA Division I playoff game. Given the climate, one would expect all of those things would remain, so preemptions would be just about 1 a month on average, although highest in March and May during playoffs. For a health update on Braun Strowman, the Wrestling Observer newsletter pointed out that Strowman, 39, underwent neck fusion surgery on his C4 and C5 vertebrae this past week at the Andrews Sports Medicine Clinic in Birmingham. Generally, neck fusion surgery is just over 1 year out of action. Sticking with Braun Strowman, he recalled his release from WWE, telling Fightful, "We talked a couple of times and I enjoyed my time away as much as I did at first. It was a hard pill to swallow, but it was something I realized I needed because at the time I was just mentally going crazy, not just with WWE but everything in life. So it was an opportunity to take a step back and truly realize how amazing it is to work here and how truly blessed my career has been. In the short amount of time of my first stint here, you name it, and I did it. Money in the Bank, Universal Champion, Tag Team, Intercontinental, whatever pay-per-view I main evented, whatever building I sold out. So having that opportunity to take a step back and go, wow, I got to do a lot of stuff. But at the same time, I hated being gone. I love this. I've said it time and time again. I truly believe I was put on this earth to do this and for this company." Talking about Raw from this week, the Wrestling Observer newsletter made this revelation. Much of the top brass, including Vince McMahon, was at the show. McMahon didn't run the show itself, as Paul Levesque was doing that, but he did make changes in the show, mostly changing around the order of some of the matches and segments. At first, there were a lot of talent scared and not happy about McMahon's involvement, but the reality is everyone accepts that he's now the ultimate decider, and when the merger takes place, Ari Emanuel basically put in place that it will remain as long as McMahon wants it to, because he will be the person in charge of WWE and the final decision maker. Touching on the possibility of a dream match for CM Punk at Forbidden Door, it was said that this week, New Japan Pro Wrestling star Kenta tweeted that he'd be interested in working the Forbidden Door if the money is right. It would appear that the money is right because Fightful Select learned this week that the working plan was for Kenta to work the show. Kenta actually worked AEW Dynamite back in April 2021, teaming with Kenny Omega to face Jon Moxley and Lance Archer. We haven't heard that Kenta's deal to appear at the show is finalized, but both companies are operating on the assumption that he is. However, the internally discussed opponent brings a different gravity to the situation. We've learned that CM Punk has been discussed as Kenta's opponent, which could help bring closure to an over-decade back and forth between the two. Throughout their careers, each man has taken shots at the other, emanating from Punk using Kenta's go-to-sleep finishing move. Kenta said recently he no longer cares about that, but wants a lot of money for Forbidden Door. Reviewing the confrontation between Asuka and Io Sky on SmackDown, Jim Cornette said this on his Experience podcast. How is this not on somebody's radar as stereotypical or even downright racist to the Japanese people the way that Asuka is? I don't know, told to act or encouraged to act or written for to act or what the F. It's like she's grunting and squealing and trying to when she's impacted, and it sounds like the bad 60s Godzilla movies dubbed over. What is going on with this? They're screaming and sticking their tongues out at each other when Io Sky comes out and acting like they're about to throw up. Mentioning the trilogy match between Cody Rhodes and Brock Lesnar, the Wrestling Observer newsletter noted that Lesnar vs. Rhodes 3 will be one of the SummerSlam main events. There has been a lot of talk about adding a stipulation, and one of the ideas is a bull rope match. That is not official, and there are multiple other ideas for that match on the table, and no final decision has been made. Right now, Lesnar is scheduled to work on the July 7th Raw in Baltimore, the July 17th Raw in Atlanta, and the July 31st Raw in Houston. When it comes to Mercedes Mone potentially appearing at the Forbidden Door event, it was reported that AEW hasn't landed the former Sasha Banks, though there have been some references to her in the past on AEW TV. Fightful Select has learned that while obviously there has been interest, there had actually been an inquiry about the possibility of her appearing on an AEW show, specifically Forbidden Door. Those with knowledge of the situation claimed that AEW had spoken to New Japan Pro Wrestling or those with ties to NJPW in an effort to facilitate the appearance. However, we haven't learned if any progress was made in that sense. Sources on the New Japan side told Fightful that the potential of AEW using Mercedes was mentioned as far back as January, with Forbidden Door brought up at that point. We didn't hear of any particular progress though. NJPW believes we'll have her out through the Forbidden Door show. However, there was at least interest on AEW's side. And this was your pro wrestling news update. I hope you're all having a great day. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see y'all later.